Part 14. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 131. Ice Emperor Heibodong. That was the super fighting emperor who was very popular back then. Ahem, isn't the elder trying to make us happy? If he is really the Ice Emperor Heibodong, how could he be in a place like this? Haha, didn't you hear the elder say the word once? In addition to being shocked, these disciples were more afraid of the old man. Then Xianchen raised his eyes and smiled faintly at the shocked disciples. Then he motioned to these disciples to continue on their way. Camel. Desert camel. The best tool for transportation in the Tagore Desert. At this moment, I suddenly saw an extremely huge scaffolding built not far away. There are many camels suitable for walking in the desert. Looking at those camels, Xianchen was slightly confused, so he smiled at Ruan Suanji, who was wiping the sweat on his forehead, and said, "Let's buy some camels and go on the road. After all, I think the sun is so poisonous. If anything goes wrong, I'll get heat stroke. Going into the desert is no joke." "I listen to you," Ruan Suanji replied with a smile, her beautiful eyes narrowed like crescent moons. The accompanying disciples followed Xianchen obediently. For these people, they may have heard of the word camel, but it does not mean that they have actually seen it. Now, looking at so many so-called camels, the expressions of these disciples are full of surprise. One of the sword cultivator disciples saw two small bulges on the backs of the camels. He was stunned and couldn't help but want to reach out and touch them. "Don't touch. If you touch casually, you'll get kicked." Just when the disciple reached out to touch the camel's bulge, a guy dressed as a waiter suddenly came up to him in a hurry. The waiter with his small eyes could no longer squint as he carefully looked at these guys in his eyes. When his eyes fell on Xianchen, his eyes radiated a strange light. "Haha, dear guest, do you want to buy a camel? Our camels are all trained by the best trainers. If your guest needs it, I am willing to carefully select it for you, waiter." The waiter noticed Ruan Suanji next to Xianchen again. Looking at the elegant and well-built girl, his eyes shone, and he obviously mistook Xianchen and others for the younger generations of a certain big family who were out for fun. "These camels are indeed good. As long as you can help me pick out good camels, not only will the price be negotiable, but I will also reward you." Xianchen's heroic tone made the waiter extremely excited. After hurriedly asking Xianchen how many camels he needed, he immediately led others to start carefully selecting. Not long after, about 10 tall camels appeared in front of everyone. The disciples looked at these docile camels and couldn't wait to ride them one after another. Each camel has 1,000 gold coins, so here is a total of 13,000. The remaining 3,000 should be regarded as a reward for you. Thank you, master. Since I am so generous, I would like to warn everyone that there is no need to go all the way into the Tagore Desert. You can just wander around casually. You know, this Tagore Desert is not only home to many snakes, scorpions, insects, and ants, but there is also a kind of snake man who can control snakes. The waiter explained seriously the dangers that existed in the Tagore Desert. But he didn't expect that Xianchen had no intention of listening to his nonsense here, so he had already led these disciples towards the location of the strange fire map given by Heibodong. The vast desert and golden sand are the only main theme here. As the strong wind carried the sand and swept across the world, the wind howled incessantly. The disciples riding on the backs of the camels were all complaining incessantly. "Xianchen, aren't you hot?" Ruan Suanji was so hot that she almost suffered from heat stroke. Although she was walking in front of her, at least Xianchen's ice-type fighting energy was flowing out. But it's different now. She not only has to endure the baptism from the scorching heat, but also has to endure the clothes being soaked by sweat. He frowned and looked at Ruan Suanji, let out a breath, then lightly touched his ring, and then Xianchen threw the delicate vials into everyone's hands one by one. "This is a cooling pill. If you take it, you can travel smoothly in the desert for 10 days. Everyone who was originally confused, after hearing Xian Chen's explanation, no longer hesitated and swallowed the so-called cooling pill. As the cooling pill took effect, within a few breaths, these disciples immediately felt as if their whole bodies were being enveloped by a light cool breeze. Under the influence of the cool breeze, the disciples all showed expressions of joy. Under the influence of the rush, those disciples lay down on the camel's back to rest temporarily. Some disciples looked left and right, admiring the unique scenery in the desert. "Elder! Look over there. There seems to be someone over there," just as Xian Chen was talking to Ruan Suanji. Suddenly a disciple exclaimed, and everyone looked in the direction he pointed, and really noticed that there was a figure on the sand dune not far away, running away in an extremely embarrassed manner. But perhaps because the figure was afraid of something, when he was about to go down the sand dune, he suddenly lost his balance and rolled down the sand. Xian Chen frowned and looked at the figure rolling down the slope, but a hint of complexity flashed across his brows. I don't know how long it took, but the figure finally rolled down to the ground. Looking at the figure who tried several times to get up, but had no strength at all, Xian Chen frowned, so he raised his hand to signal. These disciples rushed towards the figure. Not long after, the group finally came to the figure that rolled down from the sand dune and fell to the ground. Is he dead? Why is he motionless? Don't talk nonsense. There are many dangers in the desert. If you encounter something like this, please help if you can. One of the disciples shook his head helplessly and got off the camel. When he walked to this man's side, he did not forget to untie a bag of water hanging from his waist. Looking at the bag of water, the disciple seemed to be reluctant to part with it, so he pulled out the seal and poured it hard onto the man's face without hesitation. Maybe it's because of the stimulation from the water source. The man who was supposed to be in a coma gradually opened his eyes after some stimulation. Am I dead? The man's first words made everyone present laugh. After hearing the laughter, the man suddenly sat up in shock. But when he noticed that the person who saved him seemed to be from a certain sect, he bowed to everyone with clasped fists and saluted with great respect. Thank you for your help. The man was very excited, but when he remembered something, he hurried on. But when he glanced at the man's thigh and noticed the scars on his leg, he said calmly, "Your leg has been poisoned. If you continue to drive forcefully, I'm afraid the rescuers haven't seen it yet. You have died in this desert." What? The man obviously heard Suankin's warning. After looking at Xian Chen in shock, he suddenly remembered that he had been scratched by a snake man not long ago. Don't look at me like this. We are not bad people. Here is a pill that can heal your injuries. If you think we are reliable, just eat it. Xian Chen spoke calmly, then threw a small jade pot full of elixirs towards the man. Under the subconscious acceptance, the man hurriedly continued. Looking at the green elixir, the man felt mixed emotions in his heart. Why are you helping me? The man asked with a frown. Although he never felt that Xian Chen and others were bad people from the bottom of his heart, they treated him so well. For a person who had never met him before, it was like falling from the sky. Good thing about Pi. Haha, our elders have always been kind-hearted, so just accepted. A young disciple who was lying on the back of a camel watching the show in silence explained cheerfully. When the man heard the word elder, he looked at Xian Chen with shock. If a young man who can become an elder at a young age is not gifted, then the only explanation is that it is just a joke between children. However, maintaining the principle that after all, the opponent is short-handed, the man still looked at Xian Chen suspiciously and asked in a confused voice, I wonder which sect you belong to? When I return to the support group, I must let us the leader comes to say thank you. Haha, we are all disciples of Yunlin sect, and this is our elder. As for the beautiful sister next to us, she is our mentor. What? Yunlin section. The man was obviously so shocked that he couldn't breathe after hearing the other party announcing his home. After all, as a citizen of the Jiama Empire, how could he not have heard of the power of the Yunlin sect? You can become an elder at a young age. Could it be that you are a fighting master? The man was shocked, but after thinking about it, his eyes looking at Xianchen seemed to be filled with a glimmer of hope. After gritting his teeth and shaking his body, he immediately knelt down on the spot, clasped his fists towards Xianchen with great respect, and begged, "Elder, to be honest, I am a soldier from the Modi mercenary group. This time, our Modi mercenary group sent some teams out to hunt monsters on a daily basis, but I didn't expect that my team would be besieged by snake people. My team is now in a critical situation of life and death. If you are willing to help us, our leader will definitely reward you heavily when you return to the Modi mercenary group." Modi mercenary group? Is it the support group established by Xiao Yan's two brothers? Xianchen looked at the man with a solemn expression. He originally thought that saving a life would be better than building a 7-level pagoda, but his dream came true when he encountered the soldiers from the support group established by Xiao Yan's two brothers. As the saying goes, enemies never get together, and now that they have met, Xianchen naturally does not intend to give up this good opportunity to eradicate the roots. Haha, although I'm not short of money, looking at you, it doesn't look like you're lying to me. Then take us there. If you can, I think if I can save you, I'll save them all. Xianchen's difficult reply made the accompanying disciples retreat. Although these disciples came to Tagore Desert for the first time. However, some disciples saw many legends about the snake people in the Tajer Desert in Habodong's map shop. Elder, the snake people are no joke. I think it's better not to go. Being able to help such people in the desert is already a good thing for his ancestral grave. Some disciples wanted Xianchen not to go, but Xianchen wanted to go. How could he possibly listen to the opinions of just one disciple? Looking at Ruan Suanji on the side, Xianchen apologized to the man and said when he saw Ruan Suanji smiling and nodding, "I'm sorry, our Yunlin sect has rules, so we can't help you." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianchen raised his hand to signal the disciples to continue on their way. The man watched Xianchen's decisiveness as he passed by these camels, but he knelt on the ground for a long time, unable to regain his composure. After a moment, the man let out an extremely heart-rending roar, as if he felt unworthy for his fellow soldiers who had shared the joys and sorrows. "Let's go," they don't want to go, but I am willing to go. Just when the soldier was gradually losing hope in life, a hand came from behind him and rested on his shoulder easily. The man looked at Xianchen in confusion, and almost instantly, his dark eyes were replaced by hot tears. "Thank you. You are the benefactor of our Modi mercenary group." The man was so grateful that he couldn't breathe. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he felt an extremely terrifying force, and he was lifted up while he was kneeling. "Stand up. Stop talking nonsense. If you don't want your friends to die so quickly, just tell me where they are." Xianchen frowned and looked at this man. For this kind of person who is extremely responsible for his teammates, Xianchen admires him from the bottom of his heart. The man trembled, pointed his finger at the sand dune where he had rolled down, and said with a trembling voice, "Not far behind the sand dune." "Wow!" It was almost an instant before the man looked at Xianchen. He had already noticed that his own arm had been held firmly by Xianchen. Under the man's surprised look, Xianchen suddenly stepped on the sand with the sole of his foot. This was followed by a dull explosion. Then, on the sand surface where they were originally standing, a huge sand pit was shaken out. And Xianchen and the other two also relied on this counter-thrust force. In almost an instant, Xianchen and the man's figure had suddenly rushed onto the sand dune. One step up the sand dune. Yang Bing, who had not yet recovered from the shock, immediately felt that Xianchen, who was not about to rest, once again held his arm like lightning and moved a certain distance quickly in one direction. In just a few breaths, the two of them finally stopped on a high sandy surface. Throwing the stunned man in his hand to the ground, Xian Chen immediately raised his steps and stepped forward. As Xian Chen looked at the large group of people appearing in the desert below, there was a trace of shock in his eyes. In that melee scene, there were not only a dozen decorated soldiers, but also 8 strange-looking creatures surrounding them. Looking at the 8 strange-looking creatures, Xian Chen couldn't help but take a breath. Although those creatures had human heads and bodies, their feet turned out to be giant snake tails. As the snake's tail swung around, it made a chirping sound, which only made people feel upset. "You mean, you guys who always lick blood from the edge of your knife will be surrounded by these monsters?" Looking at the 8 monsters with human heads and snake tails, Xian Chen couldn't help but laugh at the soldier lying on the ground, and couldn't help but taunt. "Please vote for recommendation. Please give me a reward." Cry. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Xiong. Chapter 132. Sir, do you think I'm joking when you look like this? This soldier from Modi mercenary group couldn't help but laugh at himself in the face of Suankin's ridicule. However, Xian Chen glanced at the other party, and then his eyes fell on the people in the melee again. After a quick glance, Xian Chen's eyes fell on a graceful figure. This woman has an excellent figure. He seems to be around 20. She has a pretty and delicate face, and she must be a desert flower to be able to join the Desert Iron mercenary group. However, even though the desert fire is beautiful, it is definitely the kind with thorns all over its body. This woman is not only beautiful in appearance, but also quite bold in the clothes she wears. Her short clothes only wrap the chest and the area below it. And that sexy little waist that is slightly bronzed. But it was also exposed to everyone's sight without reservation. And under her short leather skirt, it even revealed a section of slender, round jade legs. Standing on the sand dune, Xian Chen could see all the battlefields at a glance. Under his observation, he even noticed the group of snake men surrounding him. There were actually several dirty looks in his eyes. Along with the eyes of those snake people, they kept scanning the woman's slender waist and tight thighs. Just when Xian Chen was also admiring the strange scenery in the desert, followed by a snake man who seemed to be the leader. With his eyes with triangular pupils, he gave the woman a fierce look and said in a hoarse voice, "Kill them. Keep that woman." Hear the snake man's order. Followed by the few snake men responsible for the containment. However, their faces suddenly showed bloodlust. As their mouths opened slightly, the scarlet snake letter spit out, and the faces of the soldiers from the Modi mercenary group were equally ugly. "Who is that girl?" Xian Chen pointed at the woman with a good figure in confusion. Yang Bing, who was lying on the ground, slowly raised his head and looked up. When he noticed the woman Xian Chen was asking about, a trace of inadvertent shyness appeared on his face. "Sir, that woman is a famous beauty in our Modi mercenary group, and her name is Xuelan. If you are willing to rescue me, I believe that with your majesty, you can definitely make Xuelan treat you have a good impression." This reply that Yang Bing reluctantly gave up his love for was obviously because he liked this woman named Xuelan from the bottom of his heart. If it weren't for the fact that he would rather give Xian Chen a bargain than give it to those disgusting snake men, I'm afraid this soldier would be beaten to death rather than flatter Xian Chen. Xuelan? The name is good, but unfortunately it seems to be a rose with thorns. Looking at the woman named Xuelan, Suankin's eyes showed a hint of complexity. Although Xuelan is indeed good looking, if Xian Chen wants to win, it will definitely not be an easy task. You must know that those who can join the support group will be ordinary people. Seeing that the young and beautiful woman was holding a sword with cold light in her hand, Xian Chen frowned and thought of a way to capture Xuelan. "Everyone, please hold on. Danzai has already gone back to ask for help. As long as we hold on for a while longer, the group leader and others will definitely come to rescue us." While Xian Chen was talking to the soldier, the woman named Xuelan frowned and pursed her red lips, and then drank in a cold voice. Facing Xue Yan's words, the soldiers seemed to see a glimmer of hope. However, as the snake men gradually approached, these soldiers who had a glimmer of hope clenched their weapons involuntarily, breaking into a cold sweat. Perhaps it was because Xue Yan's words completely angered the leaders of the snake men team. After a powerful snake man shouted loudly, the surrounding snake men who were eyeing him with ferocious faces instantly turned towards the people surrounding them. The mercenaries in the middle rushed away instantly. "Sir! We must save them," Yongbing pulled Xian Chen's arm with great worry. However, just as he finished speaking, an extremely terrifying pressure followed, overwhelming and crushing him almost instantly. Under this extremely terrifying pressure, those snake men who were supposed to rush into the air fell to the ground as if they were weightless. "Who is in the dark?" the snake leader roared loudly. With a ferocious face, he was obviously frightened by the sudden pressure. "Killing you directly will be dirtying my hands." When the snake leader looked angry, a young man wearing luxurious black clothes came slowly from a sand dune. This sudden sound made all the soldiers look overjoyed. But when they questioned that the visitor was only a young man, their faces showed an imperceptible regret. "Who is this?" Xuelan looked at Xian Chen in confusion. After all, for all of them, whether this guy who suddenly appeared was an enemy or a friend was really a matter worth considering. Facing this young man who suddenly appeared, the snake people were also shocked. The snake man with the title of leader glanced coldly with his eyes with triangular pupils. Seeing that this young man could exude such a huge aura, the snake leader was obviously a little surprised. However, unexpectedly, he still raised his palm, and immediately saw two snake men whose strength was about the same as that of a 5-star fighter. He was already swishing his tail and charging towards Xian Chen with a fierce look on his face. Facing the snake man's attack, Xian Chen was slightly silent, but he obviously didn't take them to heart. "Be careful," Xuelan suddenly shouted, but it did not change Xian Chen's expression. Instead, the two snake men who tried to kill Xian Chen felt an unprecedented sense of suffocation. Pang pang! As two sounds exploded. Then the faces of those guys who thought Xian Chen would die were completely shocked. Just when the two snake men jumped up and prepared to attack Xian Chen. But suddenly, as Xian Chen's whole aura changed, an extremely dazzling light appeared. With the appearance of this mysterious light, as expected, the two snake men, whose faces should have been full of fierce light, seemed to have been hit by an extremely hard wall. After hitting the barrier hard, the two snake men suddenly trembled and shot backwards against the sand. When the two snake men shot backwards, the blood from their mouths spurted out in a terrifying manner. Hiss! As someone took a breath of cold air, those people slowly recovered from the shock. Xuelan bit her lip gently and looked at the young man inside the golden barrier. There was a trace of complicated emotions in her bright eyes. "Xuelan, this little brother is able to burst out with such momentum at such a young age. Could it be that Danzai hired help?" "Yes, Xuelan, that boy Danzai is really a lucky general. He can actually invite such a master to help." "Haha, although I don't know if he was invited by Danzai, but the fact that he can take action at this time is enough to prove that he is a friend of our entire Modi mercenary group," Xuelan said to Xian Dust. "Is highly appreciated." The rest of the supporting troops didn't feel anything was wrong. "Your Majesty, you are awesome." Just as these soldiers were sighing with emotion, the very familiar voice of Token and the others came from the rear. As the sound appeared, these soldiers turned their heads in unison. When they noticed that Danzai, who should have been injured, was actually able to rush towards the side in full vigor and vitality, their hearts were filled with more thoughts for this mysterious Xian Chen. Expectations. "Danny, didn't you go to the city to move reinforcements? Why did you come back like this, you Yongbing?" asked the Yongbing who was rescued by Xian Chen with a complicated mood. But the Yongbing smiled and pointed his finger. Looking at Xian Chen inside the golden barrier, he looked proud. Did you see it? Those are the reinforcements I invited. I think it's the funny one you invited. There are 3 9-star fighters among the snake men this time. Don't tell me that that boy's strength is at the fighting master stage. One of the soldiers supported him. Seeing Danzi come back like this, I felt extremely angry. Although he had also witnessed Xian Chen's power, looking at the young boy, he would not believe that a young boy could be so powerful that he was not afraid of even 3 9-star fighters. But Danzi glanced at the other party very helplessly, looking at Xian Chen inside the golden barrier, and then explained speechlessly, "At first, I doubted his strength just like you do now, but since I know his identity, it has completely changed my outlook on life." The soldier was slightly stunned. With a suspicious look on his face, he glanced at Danzi and continued to ask in disbelief, "Is this kid really a fighting master? My God, such a young fighting master, it's really too scary." Sigh, Danzi shook his head with a wry smile, and then continued to explain in a serious manner, "There is no way, who knows that this gentleman is from Yunlin sect, and is also an elder invited by the sect leader." As soon as Danzi finished speaking, those doubtful voices completely disappeared, and Xuelan also frowned and pondered for a while, biting her red lips slightly, looking at the glorious young man. Frowning slightly, he frowned, "If it's true as you said, then it seems we really have a chance to escape death this time." Seeing that his men were shot away just by looking at each other, the snake leader's triangular pupils shrank slightly, the scarlet snake leader vomited softly, and said in a solemn tone, "Boy, in this Tagore desert offending us snake people is not a wise choice. If you choose to let go and leave, I can treat you as if you never appeared. After all, there are many snake people tribes in the Tagore desert." Facing the threat from the snake leader, Xian Chen felt more fear. "Haha, I advise you to act quickly. Otherwise, if you delay my affairs, don't blame me, Xian Chen, for not being ruthless and killing you to pieces." Court death. The leader of the snake people lost control of his emotions. The snake people, who always thought they were superior in the Tagore desert, couldn't bear this kind of ridicule. They immediately roared and waved their hands, and the remaining snake people charged towards Xian Chen to kill him. "Come. Help." Xuelan frowned and raised her hand to help. "No need, I'm afraid you won't be helpful." However, Xian Chen's words made Xuelan, who wanted to help, stand there in embarrassment. Although she wanted to scold Xian Chen for being arrogant. But after reacting, she remembered what Danzi had said not long ago. After thinking for a moment, Xuelan finally chose to follow Suankin's arrangement. So he crossed his arms beside his plump breasts, motioned for everyone to step back, looked at Xian Chen coldly, and muttered in his heart, "Let's see if you are really what Danzi said. If it is fake, let me make you look good." However, just before Xuelan complained, she saw those snake men who were supposed to charge lying on the ground like crooked melons and cracked jujubes. Looking at the snake men lying on the ground and wailing continuously, the expressions of all the soldiers were surprised and happy. "Boy! You can't kill us. Our Queen Medusa will not let you go." The leader felt that his internal organs were broken. Only now did he fully understand that the gap between them and this young man could be described as worlds apart. Boom! The leader of the snake men fell to the ground hard, with a frightened expression on his face. He looked at Xian Chen with fear. Although his warning was not loud, it was enough for everyone to hear. The words Queen Medusa are naturally familiar to these soldiers. But if a few snakemen can really make Medusa appear, then the title of Queen of Medusa is really too cheap. Bah! Take a piss and take a picture of yourself like this. You have the nerve to mention Queen Medusa. I think you are just delaying time on purpose. Sir! Don't give him a chance to breathe, just kill them all in one go." Danzi was angry. He was mocking, and he naturally hated these snake people who did all kinds of evil. and the other snake people also seemed to express the hope that Xianchen could continue to suppress it, otherwise, all of them would have to endure the anger and oppression from the snake people. Seeing this, Xuelan also smiled helplessly and said with a bitter smile, "Forget it, if he is really a fighting master, maybe, anyway, it seems that we are lucky enough to be saved today." When Xianchen summoned the Doqi Veil, the snake men lying on the ground were obviously in a panic. It seemed that they also knew very well what being able to summon the Doqi Veil meant. Fighter. That is a completely different level from that of a fighter. Without abnormal fighting skills or techniques as a trump card, no one would be able to complete this kind of cross-level challenge. As for abnormal fighting skills and techniques, they do not mean that. No, you are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 133. As Shai emerged, the expressions of those snake people gradually changed from fear. Although among them snake people, there are also Juxing fighters. But if they really want to fight a person with the strength of a fighting master, then all they will be left with is death. The snake leader looked at Xianchen with a shocked expression. He probably never thought in his dreams that such a young guy in his eyes would be a strong man with the strength of a fighting master. Feeling that his throat was dry, he reacted immediately, grabbed the arm of one of the snake men, and threw it towards Xianchen. Just after Xianchen killed the thrown snake man with one punch. The snake man, who was respectfully called the leader, was about to run away in a panic. However, these guys have already been blacklisted by Xianchen. Naturally, Xianchen was not willing to give up on this kind of petition, which was the easiest to contact the Modi mercenary group. Just a flash of Xianchen's figure was seen, almost as fast as lightning. He had arrived behind the fleeing leader almost instantly. You can't kill me. Queen Medusa will make you pay the price." The snake leader has reached this point and still thinks about threats. However, Xianchen, who has already committed murder, will not consider Medusa queen. Along with this, Xianchen's palms pinched the opponent's neck from behind. In almost an instant, the leader of the snake man, who had been so arrogant not long ago, tilted his neck in an instant with the force of Xianchen's palm, and died on the spot. Seeing the death of the snake leader, apart from the shocked soldiers, the ones who were most frightened were undoubtedly the snake men. What they do specifically in this Tagore desert is hunt down the human monks. Now, not only did they not succeed in hunting, but they shot themselves in the foot. "Brothers, kill. We are saved." Xuelan observed the words and expressions, and naturally saw that the snake people were now despairing and gave up resistance. Therefore, these injured soldiers were almost inspired by Xianchen's killing of the snake leader, which is why they were able to be so brave. Not long after, looking at the corpses of these snake people, Xuelan had a smile on her face. Then he laughed at the soldiers and said, "Take out all their demon pills and bring them to Machen. This snake man's demon pill can bring a very good fortune." Because the next scene was too cruel, Xianchen did not watch it carefully. He walked slowly to Xuelan, looked at it carefully, and then said lightly, "There are many dangers in the Tajer desert. Although you are a supporter of the army, but in the final analysis, she is still a girl, so girls must learn to protect themselves when they go out." Xuelan had mixed emotions, but when she saw Xianchen getting ready, she immediately spoke, "Where are you going? You helped us, you can go with us to the Modi mercenary group, our group leader will definitely not treat you badly." Forget it, I'm not interested in money." After a long time, Xianchen, who had been moving forward, raised his palm and shook it slightly. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps because he was distracted by Xianchen's back, Danze, who was observing quietly from the side, had a hint of ambiguity on his face, and said jokingly, "Tisk tisk, Xuelan, Are you still watching? Everyone has to leave. It's far away. That's right, Xuelan. This young man can become a Do master at such a young age. He must have great achievements in the future. Hearing this, a hint of drunken red appeared on Xueyan's face. She immediately turned her head and said displeasedly to these ambiguous-looking soldiers, "Okay, you guys, you know how to tease me, why don't you clear up the battlefield quickly? Leave those people alone for a while, the snake man is here again, besides, that guy is so young, I have no interest in it." Xuelan turned around, blinked her long eyelashes, licked her red lips, and recalled the scene of Xianchen's battle just now. After a while, her pretty face was gradually covered in crimson. The soldiers looked at Xueyan's appearance and knew it well, but since Xianchen really saved them just now, they naturally couldn't continue talking. Yun Lanzong and others, who were waiting quietly in one place, were taking a break. Ruan Suanji, who was bored on the back of the camel, was just about to think about looking for Xianchen, when suddenly her eyes suddenly turned in a direction and spotted a figure that looked like Xianchen. Not long after, when he saw Zhen Xianchen returning, his heart suddenly trembled. "He's back," Ruan Suanji was overjoyed, like a child waiting for an adult to come home. After seeing Xianchen return, she excitedly jumped off the camel's back, thinking about where Xianchen had come, and stepped on rushing at a brisk pace. The disciples all showed joy on their faces. After all, Xianchen was not only their elder, but also the spiritual support for all of them. "Hey, tell me, does Master Ruan Suanji like our elders?" a handsome disciple teased with a smirk on his face. "Wow, you are so brave, how dare you make such suspicions, but I very much agree with your idea, he he. Although the mentor is older than the elder, he is only a few years old. Isn't there a saying that a female senior holds a gold brick? I believe that as long as mentor Ruan Suanji is willing to work hard, he will definitely make the elder interested." "Tisk, tisk, I don't agree with your statement. You must know that our elder is only 18 years old, and he is already a fighting master. Let's not talk about future achievements, just the Nalan Yan Ran in my sect is enough to make Ruan it's beyond the reach of teacher Suanji." "What? There is such a thing?" Those disciples looked at each other in disbelief, unable to believe that Xianchen still had such a close relationship with Nalan Yan Ran. Nalan Yan Ran not only has the highest reputation among the young disciples of Yunlin sect, but also has countless suitors. If it weren't for the fact that Nalan Yan Ran is Yun Yun's direct disciple, I'm afraid Nalan Yan Ran's appearance alone would be enough to prevent her from traveling normally within the section. "How's it going? Is it solved?" Ruan Suanji, who met Xianchen on the other side, noticed that Xianchen was unharmed, and she slowly breathed a sigh of relief. "Well, they are all scum with only the strength of a fighter, making you worry." Xianchen looked at Ruan Suanji with a gentle face, but he didn't want to, but his unintentional words made Ruan Suanji's face look more and more, the red one is a little shocking. "Tisk, tisk, you know narcissism every day, who worries about you? I'm just worried that all the disciples will run away because you don't exist." Ruan Suanji explained with a red face, not afraid of Xianchen's words at all. Both eyes had already seen through everything. "Haha, whatever you say is what it is, if nothing goes wrong, let's quickly meet up with those disciples." Xianchen had already seen through it, but he didn't reveal it. Obviously, although Ruan Suanji is indeed good looking, if she is in front of Nalan Yan Ran, she will definitely lose her temperament. "Wait for me." When Ruan Suanji saw Xianchen leaving like this, her face turned red with anger, and she walked quickly towards Xianchen. The Yunlin sect disciples who had been waiting silently all had a look of wretchedness on their faces when they saw this scene. Ruan Suanji could naturally see the expressions on the faces of those disciples, but because Xianchen was around, it was difficult to get angry rashly, so those disciples could only choose to wait silently beside Xianchen. The strongest husband of Dopo. Author, Hui by Xiong. Chapter 134. Seeing Xianchen and Ruan Suanji returning safely, the disciples couldn't help but cheer. One by one, they were in high spirits, as if they had found a treasure. They completely forgot what image. The elders are awesome. Yunlin sect is awesome. Ha ha ha, following Elder Xianchen this time is the right thing to do. Who is that snake man? That is the most powerful and evil existence in the Tagore Desert. Tisk, tisk, Elder Xianchen is really strong enough, he was able to easily deal with those snake people. These disciples were so excited that they completely forgot what it meant to be reserved. Ruan Suanji also enjoyed this feeling very much. She looked up at Xianchen beside her, but she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of joy in her heart. Just when these disciples were excited, suddenly a large number of figures rushed towards them while waving their hands. No. There is a surprise attack. Disciples, obey the order. Meet the enemy, one of the disciples immediately roared, followed by those who were happy a second ago, but now they all looked nervous. Although the disciples brought out by Xianchen were generally at the level of Doja, it would obviously be impossible to fight the incoming people. However, when the scarred guys arrived, they were obviously shocked by what happened in front of them. Looking at these tense Yunlin sect disciples and the soldiers from the Modi mercenary group, they were all extremely embarrassed. When Xianchen noticed these people coming, he couldn't help but was startled, because he discovered that these guys who were injured all over their bodies were the Modi mercenary group that he had rescued earlier. Looking at these guys with doubtful eyes, he frowned and said, "What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you that I am not interested in your Modi mercenary group?" The soldiers looked at each other in confusion, but at this moment, the woman named Xuelan raised a smile and replied to Xianchen, "But I believe that our captain and the others will be very happy to meet someone like you." Planting friends. Besides, in this Tagore Desert, there are many friends and many roads, right? As for those disciples, they were all extremely silent. After all, this situation was no longer something they, the disciples, could control at will. The soldier standing in Swillen frowned, and then he suddenly knelt down on one knee, cupped his fists and said sincerely to Xianchen, "Elder Xianchen, you are not only my savior, but also the benefactor of our team. If you don't go take a look at our Modi mercenary group, you might really suffer." Although what Danzi said was good, he obviously lacked confidence. After all, he knew very well that if he invited a strong man with the strength of a fighting master, he might not be able to do it. Noticing the change in Xianchen's expression, Ruan Suanji's beautiful eyebrows trembled slightly, then she raised her bare hands and gently put them on Xianchen's shoulders. With extremely charming eyes, she said to Xianchen, "Xianchen, since we are on this trip, it's a trial run, why not go to the Modi mercenary group they call it? After all, I think those disciples must be very interested." "Huh? Ruan Suanji, you?" Xianchen looked at Ruan Suanji in surprise. After a slight doubt, a smile appeared on his face. Then he turned to look at the tense disciples and laughed loudly, "You really want to do what Master Ruan Suanji said? Do you want to go and see the Modi mercenary group? You know, they are a group of real support organizations that lick blood on the edge of the knife. If you want to go and see it, don't be scared to the point of peeing your pants. Hey elder, although you are extremely talented and handsome, you don't need to tell us in front of girls that we will wet our pants, right?" Elder. Hell, elder, you are not just bragging about your awesomeness, the carriage is not pushed, isn't it just to go to the Modi mercenary group? I, Zhao Yueshan, really went there. The emotions of these disciples were greatly elevated. After all, for them, this kind of extremely human contempt was really unbearable for them. Seeing Xianchen's change of direction, the people who were supporting the soldiers were naturally not stupid enough to point it out. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces, while Xuelan turned around and waved to a mercenary and ordered, "Fei Gao, go and pull our camel and carriage over." "Ah! But captain, when we were surrounded by snake men in front of us, those camels had already ran away." "Camel runs away." Fei Gao's words can be said to have shocked everyone, and as the captain of this team, Xuelan froze in embarrassment from the smile that just appeared on her face. After all, this feeling is really like being slapped hard in the face. Embarrassed, Xuelan lowered her head helplessly. After all, such a thing as a camel running away was something they would never think of. Hearing this, Xianchen couldn't help but chuckle slightly, and then said to the disciples behind him, "There are 3 camels in a group, prepare to use them to pull the carriage." Well, each of these disciples was confused, and each felt as if Xianchen was joking. But at this moment, Xianchen, who thought he was joking, suddenly touched the ring on his finger, and then with a flash of light, a complete set of carriages appeared in everyone's sight. Looking at these 3 extremely luxurious carriages, everyone was so shocked that their jaws almost fell to the ground. But at this moment, Xuelan seized the opportunity and hurriedly said to his soldiers, "Quick, quick, guys, now it is our turn to work hard." "Okay, Captain. Don't worry." "Oh my God. How many secrets does the elder hide?" The soldiers of Modi mercenary group and the disciples of Yunlin sect were all talking about it. They were obviously extremely shocked by this situation. Xuelan walked to Xianchen very curiously, her eyes always on the silver ring Xianchen was wearing. Looking at the silver ring, Xuelan said with surprise, "Wow, is this ring of yours also a storage ring?" "It's actually silver, but it's much more advanced than the one used by our leader." "Tisk, I'm really ignorant. I'm making such a fuss over a storage ring." "Hey, you woman, you're talking as if you have one." "Tisk tisk, I was still thinking about how beautiful the female Yunlin sect deacon Danzi mentioned was, but it turns out it's nothing more than that." Xuelan was ridiculed by Ruan Suanji, and she retorted unceremoniously. This retort completely ignited the battle between the 2 women. "Wow, you are so beautiful. You just rely on your clothes to attract men's attention. Do you really think that you can attract Xianchen's attention with your figure like this? What's wrong?" "Sister, I just have a better figure than you. I'm not like you. You're so small. It's really an embarrassment to us women." The disciples all had complicated expressions, but Xianchen was extremely embarrassed. After all, this kind of thing, for him, Xianchen, really felt like he was lying on his back. While the 2 women continued to taunt each other, the improvised camel and horse carriages were finally built. After Danze packed up the carriage, he looked at the 2 people who were arguing very fiercely, so he walked carefully to Shuiyan's side, and reminded him in a voice that almost only she could hear. "Then, that captain, if a girl is too rude, it will be difficult for a man to like her." The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 135. Huh. "Okay, you young man, you actually taught me a lesson, Captain, right?" Xuelan reached out and pinched Danze's ears, saying with an unhappy look on her face. Danze, on the other hand, was grabbed by Shuiyan's jade hand and screamed, it hurts, Captain." Danze screamed in pain, and she could only helplessly glare at him before continuing to focus on Ruan Suanji. However, at this moment, Ruan Suanji had already followed Xianchen into a camel carriage, obviously not intending to continue the unnecessary quarrel with Xuelan. In the camel carriage, Ruan Suanji also had a softer smile on her face. Noticing the change in Ruan Suanji's face, Xianchen sat quietly next to her, looked out through the window, frowned and said, "Suanji, am I really that good?" The smile on Ruan Suanji's face froze on the spot, and she glanced at Xianchen dully, with a blush on her face, but she did not reply. As Xuelan calmed down, She waved her hand to lead the troops in front. Not long after, 3 camel carriages started heading towards Stone Desert City. While they were chatting, an extraordinary and huge city located on the eastern outskirts of the Tagore Desert also faintly appeared in everyone's sight. Looking at the Stone Desert City not far away, Xuelan let out a long sigh of relief, frowned at Danzi riding on the camel's back and said, "After entering the city, you must inform the group leader and the others as soon as possible. After all, as far as Xian Chen's status is concerned, he is really special." "Don't worry, Captain, Danze, will definitely not be careless in doing things," Danze assured him, patting his chest, obviously feeling very sure of Xueyan's instructions. Not long after, as the motorcade drove into the gate of Stone Desert City, the cheers were filled with respect for these people. This huge city. Perhaps because of its proximity to the Tagore Desert, the defense here is obviously much tighter than inside the empire. Xian Chen looked out the window, but he could clearly see that there were almost a large number of fully armed soldiers patrolling the city. Camels and carriages cannot be used on the next road. This is the rule of Stone Desert City, so we can only walk to the Modi mercenary group. Want to walk? Okay, Xian Chen nodded and got out of the carriage. Not long after, Xian Chen and others, led by Xuelan and others, headed towards the south of the city. After passing a few streets, a courtyard with an area almost comparable to that of the Xiao family courtyard in Wutan City gradually appeared in everyone's sight. Xian Chen raised his head and looked at this nice mansion. But it is at the top of the center of the mansion. Noticed a flag swaying in the wind. Looking at the large characters of the Modi mercenary group painted on the flag, Xian Chen could faintly detect a strong aura of iron blood from the flag. And in front of the gate of this impressive mansion, there were also several strong men standing respectively. The big man in the center stood upright with weapons in his hands. Their sharp eyes kept scanning back and forth at the passers-by outside the door. It is not difficult to tell that the men guarding the gate can emit a faint smell of blood. These guys are the real ones, a group of hard-blooded men who roll over from the edge of the knife. This is not something that can be easily compared to those rookies who wear weapons on their waists and think they are mercenaries. "Captain Xuelan, who are these people?" One of the soldiers guarding the gate glanced at Xian Chen and others in confusion. But at this moment, Danzi was very proud and smiled at these soldiers with a lewd look on his face. "Hey, they are all guests from Yunlin sect, how about it?" Even though he is young, he is a strong man with the cultivation level of a fighting master. What? If he can reach the level of Doshi at such a young age, doesn't that prove that he is as strong as our captain? The big man looked at Xian Chen in shock, unable to believe that such a young guy could actually be a terrifying and powerful man who can possess the strength of a fighting master. "Haha, are the captain and the others here?" Xuelan waved her hand casually and asked with a smile at the soldier guarding the door. "Yes, they are all here." The big man hurriedly moved out of the way, and these people, led by Xuelan, rushed towards the hall where the 2 group leaders mentioned by Xuelan were. Not long after, a group of people entered the gate of Modi mercenary group in a mighty manner, but instantly attracted many eyes. Some observers hiding in the dark frowned and said to the people next to them, "Did you hear that? This young man has the strength of a fighting master. If this is the case, then their Modi mercenary group will very likely use this opportunity to attack our Sand mercenary group. Haha, it's just one more fighting master. Don't forget, the leader of our Sand mercenary group is a being with the cultivation of a great fighting master. So I believe that if these Desert Iron mercenaries, if the members of the group really think that they dare to start a war with our Sand mercenary group with just one more fighting master, then they are definitely wrong." Follow Xuelan, walking through several paths. Xian Chen and others met many members of the Modi mercenary group. After the soldiers noticed Xian Chen and his party, a look of surprise appeared on their faces, and then they started whispering. Noticing those people's comments, Xuelan tilted her head and smiled sweetly. "Haha, these soldiers are like this. Although they are a group of people who often go to the desert, they are also very grateful to you, an extremely young fighting master. Interested? Haha, I hope so, Xian Chen replied awkwardly, so being looked at by others, as if he were some rare treasure, made him feel uncomfortable all over. The Yunlin sect disciples who were following Xian Chen raised their heads proudly. After all, for these Yunlin sect disciples, they not only have Xian Chen, a super outstanding elder, but they also have a sect master with the strength to fight the emperor. So under this double protection, these disciples naturally feel extremely proud. After chatting along the way, Xian Chen and others followed Xuelan and continued to turn around a trail. Immediately afterwards, an extremely spacious hall appeared in front of everyone's sight. When Xuelan was about to arrive at the hall, she suddenly stopped and said softly to Xian Chen beside her, "Go in, the captain and the others will be very interested in you." Standing outside the hall, Xuelan had a look on her face. It was gentle, but it made Ruan Suanji, who was following Xian Chen, feel uncomfortable all over. Are your clan leaders named Xiao Ding and Xiao Li? However, under Xue Yan's gentle expression, Xian Chen suddenly smiled and spoke, which surprised Xuelan. Xuelan was in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe that a guy he had never met before actually knew the name of the leader of their Modi mercenary group. Are you really the first time to our Modi mercenary group? Otherwise, how could you know the name of our leader? Xuelan looked at Xian Chen in shock, the disbelief on her face was an expression of very real. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 136. Looking at Xuelan, who covered her mouth in surprise. Xian Chen showed an extremely calm expression and said calmly, "I have never said that I don't seem to know who your leader is. Besides, your leader is from the same family as me." What? From the same family? Xuelan looked at Xian Chen in even more shock. She couldn't believe that a person named Xian would actually be related to the families of the group leaders. But while they were talking outside the hall, a figure appeared at the door. "Xuelan, who is this person?" At this moment, the young man who was somewhat similar to Xiao Yan suddenly asked. When Xian Chen noticed the young man, he was shocked by his appearance. This young poet was wearing a mercenary uniform, but his tall and straight body was obviously strong, especially in his pair of dark eyes, which not only showed laziness but also concealed a hint of sinisterness. And although there was a smile on his face, he didn't know that it was actually underneath the smile. In fact, there is a fierceness like a wolf hidden deep inside. Therefore, although the young man who asked the question may look extremely kind on the outside, if you get to know him closely, you will definitely find that he is actually a vicious wolf that will never look back until it bites its enemy. Xuelan looked at the young man who suddenly appeared, and hurriedly and respectfully explained to him, "Commander Xiao Li is like this. This time we went out to hunt, but we were unexpectedly attacked by snake men. If it weren't for this man from Yunlin sect, if we need to be rescued by the elders, I am afraid that our small team will have died tragically in the hands of those snake men." Snake man? Elder of Yunlin sect, Xiao Li looked at Xian Chen with a sinister expression, obviously regarding Xian Chen as his enemy. Leader? Xuelan looked at the scene worriedly, as if she was afraid of something. And just when Xuelan thought the two were going to fight, the fierce smile that should have been hidden on Xiao Li's face suddenly disappeared. Then a bright and warm smile from the heart appeared on his face, which was extremely rare. "Xian Chen? I remember that when my father wrote a letter, he seemed to mention a guy named Xian Chen. If I guessed correctly, you should be the fourth elder's child, right?" Xiao Li asked Xian Chen with a bright face. The surrounding Yunlan sect disciples were extremely confused, although they all knew that Xian Chen was the person brought back by Yun Yun. But I never thought that he would be a character from a small city like Wuyuan City. Ruan Suanji also had mixed feelings. Although she didn't know Xian Chen before, she knew Nalan Yanran. Back then, Nalan Yanran went to Wuyuan City with Elder Ge from the sect to break off the engagement. Now, judging from the relationship between Xian Chen and Nalan Yanran, it is very obvious to judge that after Nalan Yanran broke off her engagement with the third young master of the Xiao family, she most likely got together with Xian Chen in front of her. Thinking of this, Ruan Suanji's heart of worship for Xian Chen seemed to collapse at any time. Haha, that's right, brother Xiao Li, the guy you mentioned is me. However, Xian Chen had no intention of fighting Xiao Li now. After all, with Xian Chen's status, it would be very easy to make a military support group with only fighting masters disappear. Xiao Li felt hot when he saw Xian Chen calling him second brother, so he took Xian Chen's arm and walked into the hall. In the hall, Xian Chen's eyes fell on the young man sitting at the top. This young man was wearing a white robe. At this moment, he was looking at the two people who came into the house with a smile. His eyes were a bit brighter than ordinary people. But it reveals a bit of wisdom and subtle cunning. Haha, are you Xian Chen? I heard that you are the master of all things in the Xiao family. Why did you think of coming to this desert? However, the young man asked in advance before Xiao Li could speak. This made Xiao Li, who had just become interested in Xian Chen, suddenly become wary. Brother, Xian Chen may not be who he said in the letter. After all, those letters were written by the Oba family, Xiao Li said warily. But he didn't know that he had told Xian Chen about such an important matter. Xian Chen was stunned for a moment, thinking that the Oba family had already been destroyed by him, but he said extremely calmly, the three major families, the Oba family and the Jiali family, teamed up to attack the Xiao family. I went to the Yunlin sect, so it didn't show up at that time. But when I returned to Yunlin sect, I saw the clan leader and brother Yan, and they were extremely hurt. What? You mean my father and Xiao Yanzi are injured? Xiao Li immediately held Suankan's arm and roared, but Xian Chen frowned, and the aura of a doshi burst out from his body, which made Xiao Li immediately retreated, and the young man in white robe who was sitting calmly on the chair immediately stood up. Ruan Suanji, who was standing next to Xian Chen, had been paying attention to this scene. When she saw that Xian Chen was actually threatened, she hurriedly said, "What are you doing? Xian Chen is now the elder of our Yunlin section. Are you really going to do this? Do you think our Yunlin sect has no one left?" "Disciples," Yu Yunlan sect roared loudly, and then the disciples pulled out their swords again. As the atmosphere became tense, the young man in white robe looked deeply at Ruan Suanji, then slowly sat on the chair, frowned and said, "I cannot cause trouble for him for the time being, but if the matter is investigated clearly, it will really be like this as the letter said, even if you are the fourth elder's son, I will definitely make you look good." "Brother, there must be a misunderstanding. After all, Xian Chen is just a fighting master. How could he annex our Xiao family just because he partnered with two other families?" Xiao Li let out a breath, obviously speaking with him. Just like his father Xiao Zhan, he is also the kind of person who cherishes his talents very much. The young man in white robe stood up from his chair. He turned to Xiao Li angrily and said, "What's wrong with you, kid? Why are you so sure it's not him? Brother, please wake up, it must not be him." Xiao Li and the young man in white robe started to argue. Those Yunlin sect were very embarrassed. After all, faced with this situation, it would only be their disciples who would be unlucky. "It seems you don't welcome us, let's go." Xian Chen smiled coldly, took Ruan Suanji's hand and left. "Wait a minute." The white-robed young man looked at Xian Chen with vicious eyes, exhaled a deep breath, and then said impatiently, "Although I don't know whether you are good or bad, but you can save Xuelan and the others. It proves that you still have some conscience. Stay here first. It won't be too late for you to leave when things are clear. The young man in white robe picked up the teacup and took a sip. He no longer looked at Xian Chen, but picked up a book and started reading silently. Looking at the extremely arrogant young man in white robe, Xian Chen narrowed his eyes, looked at him warily, and said coldly, "You mean, you plan to keep us?" "Huh? What? Isn't it the best thing for you and me to figure things out? Besides, if you didn't do it, you can leave, and I will apologize to you very sincerely." The young man in white robe, he slammed the book on the table, stood up with an angry look, pointed his finger at Xian Chen and roared loudly. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 137. Brother, now is not the time to quarrel. Besides, haven't we figured out the cause of the matter? Xiao Li looked at the white-robed young man with an ugly expression, obviously very dissatisfied with the white-robed young man's tone. The young man in white robe looked at Xiao Li with eyes that seemed full of surprise. Seeing Xiao Li, who was supposed to be wearing the same pants as him, turned out to be like this, I couldn't help but feel a little pain in my heart. Second brother? What's wrong with you? Your appearance makes me feel so strange. Eldest brother, the young man in white robe covered his heart and said with a sad look on his face. As for Xian Chen and others, they watched silently, as if they had no intention of intervening in the affairs between their brothers. Xiao Li gently lifted the hair in front of his forehead, raised a smile at the corner of his mouth, and replied lightly, "Brother, aren't you the one who forced me to look like this? I always thought you were a good big brother, but since you came after arriving in the Tajer Desert and establishing the Modi mercenary group, aren't you the one who changed?" That's enough, Xiao Li. Do you still have me as your eldest brother in your eyes? Do you plan to attack me like this public enemy of the Xiao family? The young man in white robe roared hysterically. And just when the hall was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder, the crowd of soldiers waiting behind the hall stepped in one after another. But when they witnessed the scene in the hall, the expressions on their faces were extremely nervous. Captain Xiao Li. Commander Xiao Ding. Don't be like this, you are brothers from the same father and mother. At this moment, Xuelan, who had been witnessing the whole process, suddenly spoke up. And just as Xuelan finished speaking, the soldiers who had also been rescued by Xian Chen also spoke one after another, obviously not intending to watch their two brothers cause any trouble. The white-robed young man saw that so many soldiers came to Suankin's rescue, which made him, who should be proud, have to lower his status temporarily. Humph. I still say the same thing, you can't leave the Modi mercenary group's mansion. Otherwise, even if you are the elder of Yunlin sect, I, Xiao Ding, will still dare to kill you. Boom. Xiao Ding, a young man in white robe, kicked the table over. With an angry look on his face, he walked away, obviously not wanting to look at Xian Chen again. As Xiao Ding left, Xiao Li walked up to Xian Chen, put his hand on Xian Chen's shoulder, and said with a dark face, "Since you saved our partners, then we naturally want to thank you. Xuelan, tell me to go down and treat these distinguished guests to a banquet today." "I obey, Captain Xiao Li." A smile finally appeared on Xueyan's face, and she hurriedly walked away. Xiao Li, who was in the hall, said to Xian Chen and others, "You should all be tired. Danzi, take these guests to rest." "Okay." Captain Danzi smiled sillily, and then said hello. The Yunlin sect disciples looked at each other. Although they were just teenagers, they had to be very vigilant in the face of such soldiers who often licked their swords. After Ruan Suanji received Suankin's signal, she followed Danze and motioned for him to lead the way. As for Xian Chen, he was also looking for a place to rest. Not long after, those Yunlin sect members were arranged, and Danzi left with a happy face. In a room filled with the aroma of medicine, a young man in white robe sitting on a chair raised his extremely charming face and smiled lightly at the young man sitting on another chair. "Second brother, you performed well just now, but can you be the bad guy next time? Xiao Li rolled his eyes at Xiao Ding speechlessly, and then said helplessly to Xiao Ding, "Brother, do you really think that boy is the person responsible for the destruction of our Xiao family?" "Well, although I have also doubted whether it was him, but looking at his appearance, it doesn't feel like." Xiao Ding's face was a little ugly, but his words were so shocking that Xiao Li almost fell off his chair. "Fall down." Xiao Ding stroked his bangs on his forehead, and then continued, "It's not like my father has never mentioned this boy's talent in his letter. Now that he is the elder of Yunlin sect, he naturally has Yun to support him. If we take action rashly, if so, it's obviously impossible to get rid of this kid easily. Brother, Xiao Yan's whereabouts are unknown, and his father is also imprisoned in the Xiao family dungeon. Can we really stand by and watch?" Xiao Li looked a little ugly. After all, they were once part of the Xiao family. Humph. What kind of father? He just uses us as Xiao Yan's stepping stones. Don't forget, our mother is just a maid, Xiao Ding roared angrily, but Xiao Li held the teacup tightly, and he didn't know how hard he used it, but he squeezed the teacup so hard that it burst in an instant. Watching the teacups falling apart, Xiao Ding rubbed his temples before continuing, "Tonight's dinner, you go and test that boy's skills. Don't forget, since our mother died, he was kicked out by Xiao Zhan, so the life and death of the Xiao family has nothing to do with us." "Oh, I hope so." Xiao Li stood up from the chair and left without looking back. While they were talking, they had no idea that in a nice room, Xian Chen was quietly leaning on the bed and watching the scene. As Xiao Li left, Xian Chen waved the scene away. With a hint of evil at the corner of his mouth, he said almost mockingly, "I didn't expect you two to have such a life experience. It's really shocking." Xian Chen said sarcastically, then stood up from the bed slowly. But at this moment, the door that was supposed to be closed was suddenly pushed open gently from the outside. Xian Chen frowned, but there was a trace of vigilance in his dark eyes. But at this moment, a charming figure walked in quietly. But the girl noticed Xian Chen sitting on the bed. But he was slightly startled, and hurriedly saluted him, and said in a timid voice, "Hello, Elder Xian Chen, I have been ordered by Captain Xiao Li to serve you. Come and serve me." Looking at the girl who came in, she seemed young, but Xian Chen suddenly burst out laughing. The girl was wearing an elegant light green outfit. Although her body is petite, however, it is relatively mature. Even so, it seems that because of her age, she looks a little green. Looking at her cute and delicate face, she looked a little timid, but it made Xian Chen feel a little pity in his heart. "Xian, Elder Xian Chen? Is there something on my face?" The girl felt a little frightened by Suankin's gaze. With a timid look on her face, she immediately asked. Listening to what the girl in green said, Xian Chen couldn't help but be stunned. When he came to his senses, he immediately shook his head kindly at her and said softly, "No, you are very beautiful. You will definitely be a beautiful woman who will conquer the country in the future." "Well." The girl raised her little head and looked at Xian Chen, but she didn't want to. Just under her slight movement, Xian Chen's eyes couldn't help but notice her waist that couldn't be easily grasped. Above. The girl immediately stepped back slightly due to Xian Chen's appearance, but what she didn't know was that with her movements, her already slender waist began to twist inadvertently. As for Xian Chen, he always felt that the other party's waist, which could not be easily grasped, seemed to have a strange temptation. Please recommend votes, monthly votes, and rewards. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 138. Elder Xian Chen, your look scares me. The girl was trembling with fear. After all, this was not the first time she had faced such a terrifying look. Looking at the girl's nervous look, Xian Chen couldn't help laughing and asked, "Haha, I'm sorry, I can't help it, but by the way, what's your name?" The girl was startled by Xian Chen's sudden change, and then said hesitantly, my name is Qing Lin. Blue scales. Why does it sound like a monster's name? Xian Chen complained in his mind, so he walked to the chair and sat down, silently looking at the girl named Qing Lin. Please help me clean the room first, Xian Chen ordered, then picked up a book placed on the table and began to read it silently. What a weird guy. Qing Lin murmured to himself, then picked up the broom next to the door and began to gently clean the room. While the other party was cleaning the room, Xian Chen's eyes inadvertently noticed Qing Lin's snow-white wrist showing his sleeves. Xian Chen was so shocked that he noticed that there were some cyan scales growing on the fair-looking girl's snow-white wrists. Is it a snake man? How could it be possible? Are Xiao Li and the others still interested in this kind of thing? Xian Chen was talking to himself, but he didn't want his words to be heard by Qing Lin, who was cleaning the house. Qing Lin raised his head almost instantly. When he noticed Xian Chen's shocked expression, he threw the broom on the ground in a panic, and then backed away toward the wall as if he had lost his mind. Then he hugged his calves with both hands and squatted down against the corner, his little body trembling constantly. I'm sorry, I scared you. It's all my fault, I shouldn't. It doesn't matter. Look, I'm the same person as you. Wow. At this moment, the sunlight outside the door shone on Xian Chen as promised. But when Qing Lin trembled and looked up at Xian Chen, he was so startled by the black wings that appeared behind Xian Chen that his mouth opened slightly. Noticing Qing Lin's frightened look, Xian Chen then walked slowly to the girl squatting on the ground, knelt on one knee, stretched out his right hand, and gently comforted Qing Lin's young face. How do you have wings? The leader said, I am a snake man, so I have these cyan scales, and you have these black wings. Could it be that you are, Birdman? Birdman? Xian Chen was slightly startled, but looking at Qing Lin's sunny and sweet smile, Xian Chen smiled and nodded, and said dotingly to Qing Lin, yes, brother, I am a bird. Well. Just when Xian Chen was about to say that word, Qing Lin suddenly stretched out his small hand to block Xian Chen's mouth. Seeing the other person looking around with a scared look on his face, Xian Chen watched silently with his own dark eyes. Qing Lin made sure that there was no one around, then he carefully approached Xian Chen's ear and said in a playful tone, well, brother Xian Chen, since we are all monsters in their eyes, then we must not be discovered, otherwise, those bad people will find out and sell us. Well. Xian Chen was stunned for a moment, looking at the innocent look on her face. Xian Chen really didn't want to hurt her kind heart. Then he nodded vigorously and said with a smile, don't worry Qing Lin, brother Xian Chen will definitely not, my identity will be exposed, and of course yours. Then let's pull go. Qing Lin stretched out her little hand and said innocently. Looking at the other party's sweet smile, Xian Chen stretched out his hand and hooked it with the other party. Having signed a contract with Xian Chen, Qing Lin continued to say cautiously to Xian Chen, brother Xian Chen, Commander Xiao Li said, let me be your personal maid for this period of time. If necessary, please don't forget to mention. Well, Qing Lin is good. When brother is free, I will take you to go shopping on the street. Xian Chen gently stroked the other party's hair, but at this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded outside the courtyard door. Xian Chen raised his brows, and immediately retracted the wings behind him, and then said quietly to Qing Lin, please remember not to tell anyone about your brother's wings. Yes. Brother Xian Chen, don't worry, Qing Lin promises not to tell anyone. Not long after, a burly middle-aged man walked in from outside. Seeing Xian Chen squatting in front of a little girl, with his brows furrowed, he frowned and said, although you are a guest, but if you want to bully a child, I will teach you a lesson. This is a being with 9-star strength as a Do Shi, and it will obviously not take long for him to become a Do master. Xian Chen also frowned and looked at the other party, obviously knowing what the other party meant. If you talk to the guests in this tone, I will really teach you a lesson. Xian Chen stood up from Qinglin with an unhappy look on his face. Looking at the middle-aged man, he couldn't help but think you need to punch and teach him a lesson. As Xian Chen's aura appeared, when the middle-aged man felt the aura of a fighting master, his eyes became extremely respectful. He immediately said to Xian Chen sincerely, "Sorry. I didn't expect you to be a fighting master." "Uncle Luji," Qinglin stood up from the ground and ran to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at Qinglin and stretched out his hand to touch his head, which made Qinglin obviously enjoy it immensely. Seeing them like this, Xian Chen reached out and pulled the other person into his arms, and said very vigilantly, "Qinglin was sent by your commander Xiao Li to serve me, so please pay attention to your behavior." "You." Lu Ji frowned, and after a moment of silence, he forced out a smile, "Haha, our leader invites you to the banquet, please invite Elder Xian Chen." Seeing the other parties change, Xian Chen took Qinglin's little hand and started to walk out. "Wait a minute, Qinglin is a maid, she is not qualified to participate in the banquet," Lu Ji said with a livid face, obviously not intending to let Xian Chen take Qinglin away. "But what if I take it by force?" Boom. Xian Chen's momentum suddenly exploded, obviously he didn't take Lu Ji seriously. But under the gaze of Xian Chen, Lu Ji was so depressed that he couldn't say a word. Lu Ji, whose face was extremely dark, had no choice but to acquiesce, and Xian Chen took Qinglin and rushed to the place where the banquet was. I don't know how long it took, but after the group of them turned a few corners, they soon saw many people on an extremely open grassland. Among those people, in addition to the Yunlin sect disciples whom Xian Chen knew, there was also a group of soldiers from other forces that Xian Chen had never seen before. Looking at the clothes worn by the soldiers, it was obvious that they were different from those worn by Xiao Li and others. Xian Chen said quietly to Qinglin beside him, "Qinglin, who are those supporting soldiers?" "They are from the Sand Mercenary Group and the Storm Mercenary Group." Although Lu Ji's eyes were full of hostility when he looked at the soldiers, but when he saw the eyes of those soldiers looking over, his face was full of anger. A smile immediately appeared. Looking at their appearance, Xian Chen shook his head slightly. After all, Suankin's cultivation has already reached the level of Duhuang, so when facing a meeting of this level, in his eyes, it is natural that he is like it is so easy for children to play house. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 139. Brother Xian Chen. Just when Xian Chen was talking to Qinglin, suddenly, Xiao Li's voice reached everyone's ears. Captain Xiao Li. Lu Ji saluted Xiao Li respectfully, but he received a flash of cruelty in Xiao Li's eyes. Lu Ji frowned timidly, obviously not daring to meet Xiao Li's eyes. Captain Xiao Li. Xian Chen replied to Xiao Li with a smile. But he didn't want Xiao Li to immediately grab his arm and walk to another place, and said to Xian Chen with a proud look on his face, "How are you, brother? Do you like the maid I arranged for you?" "Servant? You mean Qinglin?" "Haha, Commander Xiao Li, stop joking, Qinglin is just a little kid. What's more, as an elder of the Yunlin sect, how can I, Xian Chen, do such a thing that is so harmful to the world?" Xian Chen pretended to be a bitter explanation, but Xiao Li was slightly stunned. He frowned and said nothing. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to Xian Chen, "Take a seat, those guys have been waiting for a long time." "Well, please, Commander Xiao Li. You too please." Not long after, the two of them approached the banquet side by side, instantly attracting the attention of other supporting forces. The two middle-aged people sitting in the chair looked at the young man next to Xiao Li, but they were both equally nervous. Qiu Guanghe, the leader of the Sand Mercenary Group, a powerful Do master. Caijoko, Storm Mercenary Group, Fighting Master Strength. Xiao Li introduced these two people to Xian Chen with a calm face. They were also members of the support group of a large force in Stone Desert City, but he did not want to startle these two people and immediately stood up from their chairs. The awkward smiles on their faces made them look like clowns in Xian Chen's eyes. As the saying goes, don't hit someone with a smiling face. Xian Chen shook hands with theirs and then let go. After everyone took their seats, the two captains of the support group were trembling with fear. Seeing their expressions like this, Xian Chen knew very clearly that they were not afraid of himself, but of the behemoth behind him, the Yunlin sect. Not long after, the banquet started. Whether Xiao Li did it intentionally or not, tonight's banquet was extremely exciting. Not only are there singers and dancers who are good at singing and dancing, but there are also many runners from all over the world. Appreciating the beautiful scenery under the night sky, the cheers made Qing Lin standing next to Xian Chen's eyes shine. Qing Lin, take it, this thing is good. Xian Chen handed the gift from Caijoko to Qing Lin, but he didn't want to. Qing Lin reacted and waved his hands in fear. When Caijoko saw this scene, he said with a breath of fresh air, I didn't expect that Elder Xian Chen would be good at this at such a young age. If Elder Xian Chen is willing, I, Caijoko, still have many such things in my house, I am willing to give them to him. Let the elders pass the time. Haha, thank you Captain Cai for your kindness, but I don't like it. I think Captain Cai must have misunderstood. Qinglin is just the sister I just recognized. The sister you just met? Xiao Li, who had just taken a sip of wine, a pair of sharp eyes flashed with vigilance. He didn't go to see Xian Chen and drank in silence. But Qing Lin felt extremely happy after listening to Xian Chen's words. After all, to Qing Lin at this age, she was just a 12-year-old child. When the banquet was over, Xiao Li ordered people to send the group leaders away, and then specially invited Xian Chen to go to the study for a chat. Outside the mercenary regiment's residence, not long after Caijoko and Qiu Guanghe left the Modi mercenary regiment's residence, their faces instantly became extremely dark. Caijoko's face was extremely livid, and he said gloomily to Qiu Guanghe beside him, Brother Qiu, I think you should also be able to see that the Xiao Li is obviously planning to use Yunlin sect to suppress us. Haha, are you using Yunlin sect to suppress us? I just heard that Xian Chen led his disciples to travel in the desert and accidentally saved Xuelan in their group. However, Qiu Guanghe had a look on his face. He snorted angrily, obviously not taking Caijoko's reminder to heart. Caijoko took a deep breath and looked at Qiu Guanghe, who was pretending to be calm, with a look of displeasure on his face. Haha, don't be too self-righteous. You know, it seems that Xian Chen is still a member of our Xiao family, and he is also a descendant of an elder in their Xiao family. Do you really think that in this relationship, Xian Chen will not help their Modi servant, the core, at this time, completely dominates the entire Stone Desert City? You, haha, Caijoko, I thank you for reminding me, but the leader of this regiment is a being with the strength of a great fighting master, so even if they have one more fighting master, for me, Qiu Guanghe, words are nothing more than an ant-like existence. Desert Iron Mercenary Group. Mansion, study. Xiao Li sat on the chair and said with a smile on Suankin's face, haha, brother Xian Chen, have you seen it? Those two guys who are usually arrogant, turned out to be like pugs after you appeared today. Nod and bow. Captain Xiao Li misunderstood. I think they are not afraid of me, but they are afraid of the Yunlin sect behind me, Xian Chen explained euphemistically, but Xiao Li waved his hands repeatedly. Looking displeased at Xian Chen, he said, Xian Chen, since you and I are both from the Xiao family, we should treat each other as brothers in private. I'm older than you, so just call me cousin like Xiao Yan." Although Xiao Li's voice was not loud, it made Xian Chen, who was sitting on the chair, feel a little bit complicated. Looking at Xiao Li with a smile on his face, Xian Chen always felt that the other person seemed to be hiding something. Haha, Captain Xiao Li, we are no longer children, so let's open the skylight and speak frankly. I think you are preparing to ask me about the Xiao family. Does it have anything to do with me? Looking at the expression on your face that you don't want to answer, I think I must have guessed it right, so I still say what I said. God will see whether it's me or not. Now it's no longer the time to explain. Xian Chen's answer made Xiao Li, who thought he was sure of victory, feel very complicated for the first time. After all, according to what Xian Chen said now, whether he did it or not, it is no longer a fact that can make up for the incident that has passed for more than half a year. Under the premise that there is no evidence of death, Xiao Li and the two have left the Xiao family for many years. Therefore, the two Xiao brothers who left a psychological shadow on the Xiao family have already deeply left an indelible feeling in their hearts. Go to the shadows. I think, forget it, let's not talk about this. Now that we have been away from the Xiao family for many years, we have long forgotten the happiness we had as children. We are now the leader of the Modi mercenary group in Shimo City, so I would like to invite you as the leader of the Modi mercenary group to help our Modi mercenary group, which is the only one in Shimo City. A single family. Is it the same as the scene where the three legs of Wuyutan City stand side by side? Xian Chen frowned slightly, and he was silent. He had obviously seen that Xiao Li and his white-robed brother, like their father Xiao Zhan, were the kind of people who liked to be the only ones in the family. Looking at Xian Chen, who was silent, Xiao Li breathed a long sigh of relief before continuing, "If brother Xian Chen feels embarrassed, you can leave directly tomorrow. I think this may be the best way to resolve the connection between us." Haha, Captain Xiao Li is worthy of being able to become a support group. The existence of the leader can easily attack people's hearts with just a few words. But don't forget, since I, Xian Chen, can become the elder of Yunlin sect, then for someone like you naturally, I am extremely disdainful of such little tricks. The corner of Suankin's mouth raised a hint of contempt, and then under Xiao Li's wary gaze, he slowly stood up and gradually approached Xiao Li. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 140. Boom. Xian Chen stepped on the ground, causing the flat ground to collapse in an instant. Looking at the collapsed ground, Xiao Li was sweating all over his body, but he couldn't believe that the young guy in his eyes could exude such a terrifying oppressive aura. With his uncertain eyes, he had not fully realized until now that the changes in the Xiao family in Wuyutan City were most likely related to Xian Chen. It's just that under Xian Chen's extremely terrifying oppressive momentum, he has no way to open his mouth, but he can only watch Xian Chen approach him. Just when Xiao Li thought he was certain to die, Xian Chen suddenly raised his hand and put it on his shoulder, and said with a harmless smile, "Although I don't want to help you, since we all come from the same family, then I, Xian Chen, can just be a favor to you." Xiao Li looked at Xian Chen with mixed emotions. Looking at this guy with weird and elusive emotions, it really made him feel miserable. Gradually, as the oppression disappeared, Xiao Li watched Xian Chen very vigilantly. When he saw that Xian Chen had no intention of taking action against him, he heaved a sigh of relief. "But although I am willing to help you, don't forget that since I come from the Yunlin sect, I naturally have the bottom line of belonging to the Yunlin section, so before you find out whether the collapse of the Xiao family has anything to do with me, I advise you don't think about it wildly, after all, that may really touch my bottom line." Xian Chen spoke very calmly, leaving Xiao Li, who could only feel his brain tense, unable to say a word to refute. Xiao Li, who saw Xian Chen walking out of the room and clenching his fists, finally came to his senses. It turned out that from the moment Xian Chen burst out with momentum, Xiao Li only felt as if he had walked under the underworld. Walking out of the extremely depressing study, Xian Chen looked at the graceful little girl standing in the courtyard, slightly stunned, and a trace of warmth slowly appeared on his face. He quickly walked up to Qinglin, stretched out his hand and stroked the other person's head gently, and said with a gentle face, "Why are you here if Liner isn't resting in the room so late?" Looking at the big boy with a sunny face, Qinglin showed an extremely sweet smile, "Because Qinglin promised my brother to serve you." Looking at this innocent smile, Xian Chen wanted to tell her so much. What does the so-called service mean? However, due to the fact that the other party was too young, Xian Chen was not allowed to speak out. Stretching out his hands, he held this petite loli in his arms, and then left under Xiao Li's gaze. "Xian Chen, I'm so happy that I wasn't stupid enough to try to provoke you. Only then did I understand what it means after meeting you." Xiao Li, the once arrogant leader of the Modi mercenary group, was finally frightened by Xian Chen's appearance. After Xian Chen and Qinglin left, when they were about to reach the door, they accidentally discovered a girl who raised her jade hand to knock on the door, but she didn't. Seeing that the girl raised her hand to knock but was hesitant, Xian Chen frowned at the man and asked, "Ruan Suanji, why did you think of coming to my place when you are not resting in your own room?" Ruan Suanji turned around, and when she saw Xian Chen holding an extremely cute girl in his arms, she ran over quickly, gently placed the green scales in Xian Chen's arms on the ground, and then looked at Xian Chen. He said with an unbalanced face, "Xian Chen, you are the elder of Yunlin sect, do you really not want to worry about your identity and bully a little kid? You are overthinking." "How could I bully a child?" Xian Chen looked at Ruan Suanji dumbfounded. He did not expect that the misunderstanding would go so deep. Ruan Suanji hugged Qinglin and asked with a worried look on her face, "How are you doing? Are you injured anywhere? If you are injured, you must tell your sister so that she can help you find someone to treat you." "Well." Qinglin's innocent smile made Ruan Suanji melt. Little sister has misunderstood. Qinglin promised brother Xian Chen that he would serve him, so little sister, please stop trying to persuade me. Ruan Suanji looked at Qinglin silently. She did not expect that her good intentions would be regarded as just acting by the other party. Ruan Suanji after helplessness. Qinglin really had no choice but to face Xian Chen and said seriously, "Xian Chen, although I shouldn't say this, I still want to remind you that Qinglin is not a girl after all. You can't do this, something so outrageous happened." "Don't worry, Xian Chen knows what's going on." Xian Chen agreed cheerfully, and then Ruan Suanji saw the two of them walking into the house. Ruan Suanji, who had a complicated look on her face, took a deep breath and was just thinking about stepping in. But at this moment, the door that should have been opened suddenly closed suddenly. Ruan Suanji was startled and trembled with anger, but Xian Chen and his family's house was tightly closed, otherwise, he really wanted to break in directly. After Xian Chen left, Xiao Li hurriedly looked for his brother. Xiao Ding sat on the chair with an ugly face. He probably couldn't believe that the information Xiao Li brought back was this. Xiao Ding, who was in a complicated mood, looked at the livid Xiao Li, frowned and said, "Are you sure that boy's strength is definitely more than just a fighting master? You must know that this kind of thing is not a joke, that boy is so young." "Brother, I had doubts at first, but don't forget, he can become the elder of Yunlin sect at a young age. It is obviously impossible if he relies on talent alone," Xiao Li explained, but Xiao Ding was already angry. Was speechless. If that's the case, then this kid is very likely to have participated in the activities that destroyed the Xiao family. Xiao Ding's dark eyes were like sharp daggers, shining coldly outward. And Xiao Li had the same expression. After all, the news brought by Xian Chen was enough to refresh Xiao Ding's understanding of the Doqi continent. Ruan Suanji, who had been rejected, was just about to leave when she suddenly saw Xuelan, who had attended during the day. Noticing that the clothes Xuelan was wearing were so bold, Ruan Suanji frowned and hurriedly asked Xuelan, "You stayed up in the middle of the night, Did you come here with the intention of knocking on his door? And Xuelan probably didn't expect that Xianchen and Xianchen would have someone guard the door in the middle of the night. You misunderstood. I just have some things that I need to discuss with Elder Xianchen. Although Xuelan knew that she was in the wrong, she still looked for a reply on a topic that could easily resolve the awkwardness. Seeing the other party say such words, Ruan Suanji, who was originally in a complicated mood, felt more and more depressed at this moment.